Hello everybody, my name is Brady and we are back with another React video, and today we're going to be checking out more Geography Now. I think today we might be able to finish the A's. Isn't that crazy? We've done like 8 episodes of this. I'm not sure. I don't remember off the top of my head how many. We clumped some together, but I think it was 8. And no, I won't check. I'm just going to go off the top of my head. So today we're going to be doing Austria, and maybe, depending on how much time we spend on Austria, we might do Azerbaijan. That would be I think that's the end of the A's, though. Because once we get to AZ, I can't imagine there's any more countries with AZ at the start of the name. I hope I'm not overlooking anybody, like, super important. Everywhere is important, but like somewhere you guys would like make fun of me if I forgot about it, but I'm pretty sure Azerbaijan is the last of the A's. Then we get to go into the B's, and I'm pretty sure there's a good amount of those, so we'll spend another year on those. Alright, so let's get started with Austria. As far as what I know about Austria, not a ton. I know a little bit about their relationship with Germany. But a lot of that is in relation to Germany. So I would say Austria on its own. Like, I know little stories from Austria, but like broad overarching culture, not nearly as much, or geographic significance. So there's a lot of room for me to learn here. I'm sure most of this will be new to me, so that's cool. Let's get it started.
Also nicht vergessen, wann's nach Österreich kommst, wann's Deutsch reden, nennt es nicht Deutsch.
So if you didn't catch that, he said, when in Austria, no matter how much German they speak, don't call them German, which is always fun. It must be one of those, I don't know how serious the tension is. I hope it's passive-aggressive. Like, on the spectrum of passive aggression, I hope it's low. I hope it's more like United States and Canada and not North and South Korea. If it falls somewhere in the middle, who knows, maybe it could still be healthy. But let's stick with the passive-aggressive, like, catty relationship with the United States and Canada. That's relatively harmless.
It's time to learn geography.
No!
Hey peeps, I'm your host Paul Barbato. Let's dissect the
Hey,
flag.
Paul. Love the flag. Favorite part. Probably. Kind
The flag is one of the oldest used flags of Europe. Disputably, legend has it that the flag comes from the Siege of Acre after Leopold V came back from battle and removed his belt with his blood-soaked tunic, leaving a red-white banner. Keep in mind, the Austrian flag looks very similar to the flag of Latvia. However, the Latvian flag has unequal-sized bands and is a darker shade of red. Keep in mind, many other countries...
Okay. What a Chad, am I right? Like, I thought we were talking about Austria, not Chad.
In the Eastern Europe,
It's a dumb joke, I'm
specifically
sorry.
the Pan-Slavic areas, still retain a part or complete version of the white-red pattern on their flags, like Austria. We'll explain a little bit more about this, but first, let's talk about the borders.
I didn't notice that pattern. That's
In
interesting.
terms of its location, Austria is landlocked.
In different regions, like, you'll find similar flag designs or some color similarities. Often when you find nearby countries, you'll see things in them that are similar. Of course, there's plenty of exceptions. There's probably more exceptions than not, but there's all sorts of like clusters where you look at a bunch of the region's flags and you'll be like, yeah, I see some common factors here.
Bordered by 8 other countries, don't forget Liechtenstein, in the Central European region, with the Alps dominating 3/4 of the country in the west and in the center. The country is divided into 9 states, although it's kind of funny because the state of Lower Austria is technically a little higher than Upper Austria geographically. The capital and the largest city is Vienna, located on the...
I mean, airplane. Yay, my favorite. We're not stopping. So I guess that would really depend on how you view the map. There are some places that view... like east-west as like the vertical axis on the map, and then the north and south are the horizontal. So like I guess if you viewed the map in a different way, which it can be done, nobody's telling you you can't, That could totally make sense.
Eastern side of the country, where 1 out of every 8 Austrians can be found. The city is a wonderful assimilation of centuries-old stone churches, palaces, opera houses, and monuments, as well as modern high-rises, skyscrapers, and business offices. Oh, and there's dozens of castles speckled throughout the entire country. Remember how in the Albania video I told you play that whole find the bunker game? Well, in Austria, it's kind of like find the castle game. As a member of the EU,
oh, that's much nicer.
Pretty open with all of its neighbors, and are pretty much virtually invisible with the exception of the occasional river or mountain blocking the way. The only controversy it really has is in the South Tyrol region, which historically belonged to a number of different kingdoms and empires, but for a long while it belonged to the House of Habsburg, a historically fascinating lineage that would eventually play a pivotal role in providing half of Europe with all of their monarchical lineages. In short, it kind of initially belonged...
Yeah, I've heard the Habsburg name plenty, with how mixed the royal families are. You find a lot of common names, and it's interesting how that crosses over into some countries that I'm a little less familiar with. This concept that I've already been exposed to a little bit, but then it's like, oh, okay, that also extends into this place you don't know about. That's a whole new world to look into, so... pretty sick.
Belonged to Austria. However, after the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye in 1919, the entire southern part of this region was kind of reluctantly given to the Kingdom of Italy. This explains why Austria has a relatively narrow eastern parameter that stretches into the Alps, as the South Tyrol region, which previously gave the country a wider range of dominion, was ceded to Italy. Austria was kind of like, okay, Italy, we'll give you this piece of land, but, you know, just a little heads up, pretty much everybody in there is Austrian, and they speak German, and they kind of want to be part of Austria. But hey, it's all yours. The most confusing part of the region, though, would have to be...
Oh, another airplane. That's one of those cases where you're taking a place that, if hostility ever broke out, is more trouble than it's worth in a lot of ways. If there is no hostility, and they generally are able to take care of themselves and you don't bother them too much, you might be able to get away with having people who are ethnically different from the majority of a country and have everybody get along just fine. It's when tension occurs you'll start seeing a little bit of complication there. That's one of those cases where, like, I don't know why. Land for the sake of land feels like a good thing. If you're like a true imperialist, just having more sounds like it's good, but it's the way in which you govern it, and that is the bigger factor in everything. And sometimes I wonder, like, how much people are thinking about that when they have more imperialist intentions, or if it's just like more. It sometimes varies. Having something like that, it's a great bargaining chip, I would say. If you want to, that is one thing when you have this. It's something you could give up and not really have much of an issue here. I don't imagine they're going to be getting into all-out war anytime soon. Fingers crossed. I don't know if there's actually any existing tension there, but if there were a conflict, having that could be a good bargaining chip. Maybe not in this example, but I think the principle of that could apply in other examples where you have border disputes. Take a little extra so that you have something to give away. And that could be cool.
Be the Jungholz Enclave. Located right on the border of the Bavarian region of southern Germany, this place only has about 300 people, separated into 4 small towns. This area is strange because it is one of Europe's only 3 point borders and is technically joined by Austria by only a small narrow corridor, only a few meters wide, on the top of the adjacent Zugspfropfen mountain that crosses over into the Austria side. Otherwise, the top of the adjacent Zugspfropfen mountain that crosses over into the Austria side. Otherwise, the only way to get into Austria from this region is by driving through Germany. This means that if you don't want to go through Germany to get into Austria from this region, the only way is to literally climb to the top of the Zugspfropfen mountain to the very where 4 borders meet and climb all the way down to the rest of Austria. Since the 19th century, the borders have been literally marked every single step of the way, and the top of the mark distinguishes the narrow crossing. Believe it or not, this is actually a common hike that a lot of people take, despite the fact that many of them don't even understand the significance of the markers. Speaking of mountains and hikes, let's talk about the physical geography geography.
That's pretty sick. I mean, if you like hiking, it sounds kind of cool.
About 3/4 of Austria is mountainous, with the Alps dominating the center and western parts of the country. These mountains are the characterizing segments that give Austria its distinct national identity, both historically and culturally. In short, even though the vast majority of people in Austria live in the low-lying plains around the mountains, Austria would not be Austria without the Alps. These mountains can actually be quite quirky, almost with minds of their own. For example, every spring in the Hochschwab Mountains and forests on the east side of the Alps, the snowmelt from the mountains completely engorges the Grüner See, or the Green Lake, engulfing the entire park with trees and...
Like, we don't have that in English. Hold on.
The Grüner See.
Yeah, that symbol right there over the U, we don't have that, so whenever I see that, I never know what to do with it. It's a linguistic thing. Like, I see all letters that I recognize, but like that sort of modifier is something that I wouldn't know what to do with as much. There are a lot of modifiers that are used in like Spanish that I would kind of understand how to use. That's one that I would not as much. But Spanish I'd be more likely to understand in general, because I believe it's the second most spoken language in my country. As far as like German goes, it's down there. It's down the line a little bit further.
Or the Green Lake, engulfing the entire park with trees and benches underneath it. These mountains also provide the perfect setting for Austria's favorite sport, skiing. The problem, though, is that although these mountains are very beautiful, they do kind of make a lot of the country uninhabitable or difficult to cultivate. Although 40% of the land is covered in forests, less than 20% of the land is arable. And for the record, yes, The Sound of Music was filmed in parts of Austria. No, not everybody has seen or even cared about seeing that movie. Of course, the mighty Danube...
I haven't. I've heard great things, though.
Country and has historically played a vital role in Austria's economy and trade sector, especially after the construction of the Rhine-Main-Danube River Canal back in 1992, which allows ships to finally pass from the North Sea through Europe into the Balkans and ending into the Black Sea. The low-lying areas of eastern Austria have nice grassy hills and plains, perfect for cattle raising and, of course, dairy production, where some of the classiest Austrian cheeses are produced. Now, of course, Austria's economy is not really that heavily based on agriculture, but rather services and industry, specifically in engine and medication manufacturing. But who does all the manufacturing? Let's find out in demographics.
Cool. So I guess Austria would it's not an unusual economic makeup to me. Like, there are some of these places, like their economic makeup is like a little less recognizable, something that I have a little bit more trouble relating to as somebody from the United States, but like Austria, it doesn't seem too far out there economically.
You know, as the home country of Mozart, Austria still kind of lives up to its classy expectation.
Oh yeah, it was. He was
about 8.5 million, about 90% of whom are ethnically Austrian, and 10% from other nations, mostly from Germany and the former Yugoslavian states such as Hungary, Serbia, and Bosnia, with an influx of Turkish people having immigrated over the past few decades. The reason why there are so many Eastern Europeans in Austria has somewhat to do with the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Habsburg dynasty, which was one of the most pivotal monarchies that shaped the entire course of European history in every corner, from Spain to France, England to Russia, and so on. The Habsburgs even took over Mexico for a short period of time. That's how powerful these people were. Yes, Austrians speak German, however, rule number one, do not call them German. They're kind of reluctant to even tell you that they speak German, and will be very quick to point out that it's Austrian German, not German German. The language has a very distinct vocabulary, a lot of the words influenced from Eastern European nation words, and they also have their own standard dictionary set apart from the German and Swiss dictionaries.
Okay, yeah, that's totally legitimate. Like, depending on where you come from, like, Spanish is different. Like, it's often taught differently, at least in my experience, in the Americas as it would be in Spain itself. Like, if I wanted to take a Spanish class, I would have to decide, okay, which version of Spanish do I want to learn? Because there's some things that are just very distinct about particular places. And if I was very comfortable with speaking Spanish, like straight up old world Spain Spanish, and I brought that to the New World, it might take a little bit of adaptation. There might be a few moments of confusion or just awkward linguistic barriers there, so I could see how that could happen. But they're so close to Germany. That's the one thing that's kind of fascinating about this. there's an ocean separating the Americas from Spain. In this case, Germany's right next door, basically. So I don't know how it could have been such a big divide, but also this might go back pretty far.
Dialects can change drastically in Austria. Sometimes it only takes about 40 kilometers traveling inward until you reach an area that has a completely different accent. And don't even get started on those Liechtensteiners. In contrast to Germans, Austrians like to define themselves as more soft-spoken and reserved. They don't like to upset anybody, and courtesy is very highly expected in this country. Educational accomplishments and achievements are very highly prized in Austria. One thing Austrians do kind of obsess over, though, are titles. They prefer to be addressed by every title that they've obtained for themselves, even if it equates to like 15 titles. Mr., Dr., Chairman, Vice CEO, Chairman, Otto von Schnitzelbach, Krakengeschäftsmeier. One thing that Austrians will tell you that they really like to do is...
Okay, that's very distinct from here. Like, if you get like some sort of a title, you'd probably opt for whichever title has like the most prestige. So if you're Mr. and a doctor, you'd probably opt for doctor. That's fascinating, though. I mean, I guess I get it. You worked hard for those titles. You want to be recognized for all of them.
It's just taking simple walks, whether it's just for an hour to clear their head, and in any weather, whether it's great or whether it's raining. They even have a word for it, spazieren gehen. Don't be surprised if an Austrian invites you to just go for a walk. Go with it. They're a little bit more conservative in their politics.
I like that. I like walks.
Attributed to the growing elderly population. However, the youth have always been known to ruffle up a few controversy feathers here and there. I mean, the winner of last year's Eurovision contest was an Austrian drag queen with a beard. They keep things a little bit on the down low. However, once every so often, one notable figure comes and shines through, like Christopher Waltz and everyone's favorite bodybuilder Arnold Schwarzenegger, which, by the way, contrary to some stupid rumors, no, the last name Schwarzenegger does not have a racist connotation behind it. It literally just means the person from Schwarzen. Schwarzen meaning black, Egger meaning soil, black soil, fertile soil. It basically just means the place of the fertile soil.
Is that something that people have confused? Is that like a common confusion around his name? Because I didn't know that was a thing. I've heard people say his name like slightly wrong and have it sound unfortunate, but I never actually thought that there was any sort of racial connotation to the name. And I didn't know that other people thought that there was a racial connotation to the name, to the point where somebody would have to make that sort of correction. You know what would probably really piss off the Austrians? I keep forgetting that Arnold is Austrian. Sometimes my brain defaults to him being German, so I'm like, oh, he's from Germany. No, he's Austrian. And like when I think more about it, I'm like, oh yeah, he's from Austria. But like the first thought is German, so then I think of Germany, and then I have to like refine that thought to get to Austria, which is unfortunate. I could see like with that built in here, I could see why Austria might resent Germany in that sense, in the same way that Canadians resent people from the United States just a little bit. I get it. Like, you got your own stuff going for you. You seem lovely, but this guy next to you is getting all this attention that you might not think is as warranted. You might deserve a little bit more of that attention.
Family is descended from a long line of prosperous farmers, which is what the name refers to. Case closed! Speaking of relationships, let's talk about the friend zone.
Sick.
In the simplest way I can put this is kind of what Austria's relationships kind of look like. Now shut up and dance with me. Pretty much all of Austria's best friends have some kind of a love-hate relationship with them, but love always wins in the end. It's kind of crazy too, because in the nicest, softest way I can put this, Austria did kind of start or influence both world wars. World War I with the attacks from the Empire on Serbia after the Archduke was assassinated, and World War II because, well, I mean, Hitler was kind of born in Austria. I mean, no Austria, no Hitler. To this day, Austria is incredibly neutral.
It's a loose connection, but yeah, fair enough. It's it's a bit of a stretch to attach the whole country to it, but yeah, I guess that's fair-ish, kind of, a little bit.
In a very interesting alliance limbo, as they have neither joined NATO or the Warsaw Pact. But enough on that. In regards to their eastern neighbors, because of the whole Austro-Hungarian Empire, Austria and many of the other Central and Balkan states, like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and so on, have close ties to Austria, even though historically they had lots of drama under the Habsburg dynasty. But hey, it was either the Habsburgs or the Ottomans, and they hated it. In regards to Italy, Italy has always been a huge trade partner, but of course, like mentioned before, the whole South Tyrol region thing kind of causes a little bit of tension. They aren't going to war or anything, but Austria is kind of like, look, Italy, I mean, come on. Everybody there is Austrian. In terms of best friends, Austria would kind of reluctantly say Germany, but more specifically Bavaria, the region of South Germany. Bavarians and Austrians are very similar.
So they've got the tension with Germany, but Germany is like a top ally. So yeah, the Canadian example is really good. Like, the more they explain, the more it feels like U.S. Canadian. Like, as far as like the better ways for an American to relate to these relationships, that would be what we are most familiar with.
Similar in their culture and tradition. Some Austrians will tell you that because they get along so well, Bavaria is said to be the 10th Bundesland, or state, of Austria, although Bavaria alone has more inhabitants than the whole of Austria. You know all that stereotypical lederhosen and dirndl costume stuff that you see on all those Oktoberfest commercials? Yeah, that's kind of what you would attribute to Bavarian and somewhat Austrian culture, but they only do that on special occasions. I mean,
okay,
it was up to me, I would wear that stuff 24/7, but hey.
Pretty sick.
In conclusion, Austria is kind of like the country that secretly changed the entire course of all of European history right under our noses without us even knowing about it. Here's one more picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and get ready because Azerbaijan is coming up next.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, probably one of the more influential immigrants in American history. Like, as far as like one guy who made a pretty significant impact, yeah, he's up there. I had a conversation with a guy in the history department of my school, and we were trying to, it was a fun little jokey project that we had where we were trying to create a Mount Rushmore of American immigrants, and he made the argument that Arnold should be up there, and I felt like, oh, there's got to be a few above him, but like also, like, I get why you'd make that argument, because yeah, he is incredibly impactful. So yeah, let's hit a continue and check out the Azerbaijan.
All right, we finally reached the last country beginning with an A, and that only took about, I don't know, like 3 months. All right, here we go. Azerbaijan.
That's probably how long it's taken for me to react to them. That's like half the work. Half. That's generous to me. Like a tiny fraction of the work.
Hey everybody, I'm your host Paul Barbato. You know the drill. Let's dissect the flag.
Flag. Oh yeah, I liked their flag. Like, it's got a lot of like strong colors to it. But I really like how, like, the moon and star, like, sit on the red. I like the it's bright, but also there is a little bit of contrast there. I generally think it's a pretty good-looking flag. There's something there. I'm excited for this one. One thing we do see that's common, the white and red, we see that in the region, and the green. The blue, I'm not sure what that could symbolize. Is the red the blood of the martyrs? We shall see.
The flag of Azerbaijan is a tricolor banner of blue, red, and green with the white crescent and star emblem in the center. The blue represents the Turkic heritage of the people, the red represents progress and social democracy, and the green represents the Islamic civilization.
Yeah.
The crescent, of course, you would think means Islam, and it does, kind of. However, the Azerbaijanis and Turks will tell you that the symbol originated from the Turkic people and not the Arabs, so the symbol could also refer to Turkic heritage. And the 8-pointed star, some people will tell you that the star represents the 8 tribes, like the Dumbuli, Kizilbash, and etc., but it actually represents the 8 letters of the word Azerbaijan written in Arabic, even though Azerbaijan has adopted a Latin-based alphabet. Moving on.
That is so strange. I like that. I like the 8-point star. I love when people do the star differently. The 5-point star, it's fine, but as an American, I feel a little bit overexposed to it. We just keep slapping those things on once every other generation, so it's a bit much.
Azerbaijan written in Arabic, even though Azerbaijan has adopted a Latin-based alphabet. Moving on.
That is strange.
To make
So it makes me wonder why they would do that if they like just while they do come from that Latin-based alphabet, do they culturally identify more with the Arabic side, which could cause them to lean towards that and maybe reject a certain part of their culture? That choice feels like it must have some sort of a deliberate meaning behind it, and I'm very curious about that.
Make things short, if you look at Azerbaijan's borders, it kind of looks like a crazy bird flying while it's losing one big feather. Located in the Central Caucasus region of Eurasia, Azerbaijan is bordered by 5 other countries. You would think 4, but we'll talk about this little guy in a sec. And the
that's
Caspian
weird.
Sea to the east.
I don't know about that.
Baku, right along the coast of the Caspian, and the country is divided into 9 regions and one interesting autonomous republic. We'll talk about that soon, but first, now as we mentioned in the Armenia video, we did talk about the Nagorno-Karabakh region and how there's a lot of tension and conflict. First of all, do not call it a republic to an Azerbaijani. They will get mad at you. The Nagorno-Karabakh region is not recognized as a sovereign state by any other country in the world, and today it's kind of considered as a de jure region of Azerbaijan, even though Azerbaijanis avoid going there. Also in the Armenia video, I did talk about the Armenian genocide, which did kind of ruffle up a lot of feathers with the Azerbaijani and Turkish viewers, and so I think it's maybe only fair if I talk about the Azerbaijani side of the perspective. The Azerbaijanis will mention the Khojali massacre, in which hundreds of Azerbaijanis were attacked by Armenian troops. It's estimated somewhere around 300 to 600 people were killed during the massacre. Both sides have attacked each other in the conflict.
It's good to recognize that things happen on both sides, but also it's good to recognize that if the response is not proportional, we're of course going to like sane people condemn the side that just blows things out of proportion. That's only natural there. But yeah, it is important to understand that it is not a one-sided conflict. It just leaned heavily on one side when it came to the death toll.
Move on before things get a little bit more awkward. Then you have the strange,
it is awkward, very awkward,
exclave known as the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic in the west, bordered by Armenia and Turkey. By the way, the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic is not a separate country. It is part of Azerbaijan. They don't want to be separate. Remember how in the video I told you
that actually matters there, whether or not the place wants to be separate, and that also changes like the legitimacy of a place. Sometimes sometimes large countries will claim an area that does not want to be part of that country, and then it puts it in kind of this weird space of legitimacy where, like, yeah, maybe the larger colonizer type imperialist country will have the military force necessary to hold the place and keep it under control and stuff, but there is always that sort of like, when people want to be separate, it should at least be acknowledged in the conversation, at a minimum.
Told you that Mount Ararat was kind of considered the area where Noah's Ark landed. Well, the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic is kind of considered the area where Noah's family lived. This area is the only part of Azerbaijan that has access to Turkey.
That makes sense.
Very, very narrow 8 or so kilometer border along the Araz River. The only problem is, because of the whole border blockade, if someone from Nakhchivan wants to go to the rest of Azerbaijan by road, they would have to literally cross over into Iran and drive along the 12 highway paralleling the Araz River all the way to the nearest main crossing at the Milmugan Dam, nearly 50 miles from the technical border of Armenia. And you could probably guess why. And as you can guess, the Nakhchivan region is another area of controversy between Azerbaijan and, you guessed it, Armenia. Now, although Armenia isn't fighting for ownership of Nakhchivan, essentially this is what each side of the argument is saying. Nakhchivan, stop destroying the ancient Armenian sites and monuments in the Nakhchivan region as a means to erase all the Armenian culture from the area. Those claims are nothing more than just Armenian propaganda based on no actual evidence, and plus those aren't even Armenian. Those are Caucasian Albanian. Oh yeah, well I'm gonna take this to the EU court. Go ahead! I'm not telling you who is right or wrong, I'm just saying this is what they're saying. Let's go back to Baku.
Okay,
located
neutrality. Do your thing, man.
The bird's beak of Azerbaijan that juts out into the Caspian, the capital of Baku is not only the largest city and the best harbor in the Caspian Sea, but is a breathtakingly beautiful architectural wonder with its world-famous flame towers completed in 2012. Also, keep in mind, Baku...
Hold on. That is pretty...
wonder with its
Hold on, I want that other picture.
Towers
that is something. That is an architectural marvel right there. I wasn't sure what I was going to expect in Azerbaijan. A lot of places like in this general region have these very random seeming, like surprisingly like weird but kind of awesome architecture. It's a really wonderful looking area. A bit bougie for my taste, but you know, whatever.
Completed in 2012. Also,
Not my decision.
Baku has the world's largest KFC.
Aw, sick.
So anyway, the interesting thing though is that Azerbaijan was actually the first Muslim-majority democratic secular country in the world, and they were also the first Muslim-majority country in the world to have theaters, operas, and modern-day universities. Nonetheless, Azerbaijan still holds on to its ancient artifacts and historical sites, such as the famous Maiden's Tower and the even more captivating underwater Sabail Castle, known as the Atlantis of the Caspian. But to really understand how this
seems
works, we
cool.
need to talk about the
demographics.
Now,
Physical
things
geography.
get a little interesting
Sorry.
because the landscape
I
of
jumped the gun.
Azerbaijan has some
I didn't hear the last thing he said. My bad.
up its sleeve. For one, the land is about half mountainous, with the Caucasus mountain ranges dominating the north and west parts of the country, and the Talish mountain range in the south Lakaran region. With Nordic wind patterns streaming down the Caucasus, yet the mild Caspian Sea effect, the climate can be quite drastically opposing depending on where you are. Azerbaijan has this kind of strange terrain phenomena in which it has cold alpine mountains right next to these dry subtropical zones right next to the coast, in which you can find things like orange and lemon groves and tea plantations, which kind of
Seems a
need
bit jarring.
climate to grow in. By the way, Azerbaijanis love tea. They kind of obsess over it. They even made multiple monuments to tea. But the place where things get really interesting, though, would have to be in the Gobustan region, south
I guess there are dumber things to make monuments to.
of Baku. One of the world-renowned landforms that Azerbaijan would have to be known for would have to be its famous mud volcanoes. About half of all the world's mud volcanoes are found right here in Gobustan. Another cool thing is that Azerbaijan is rich in natural gas and petroleum deposits, which make up about 80% of the economy. And because of this, over time, Azerbaijan has built a mind-bogglingly complex and elaborate yet strikingly mesmerizing system of trestles, pipelines, and causeways that connect the oil reservoirs offshore in the middle of the Caspian. In fact, in 1949, Azerbaijan actually built the world's first offshore oil platform in Nefteshlari. Speaking of countries of the oil developing world, let's talk about
Demographics.
very few
Yeah.
people actually understand what an Azerbaijani is, let alone where they came from, or even pronounce
couldn't tell
Azerbaijan. We'll discuss more about that in a bit, but first, Azerbaijan has
His lab
roughly
mic's not
9.5
working.
million people, or roughly the same size as Sweden, and ethnically it's quite homogenous, with 91% of the people identifying as ethnically Azerbaijani, and the remainder of the 9% minority coming from a slew of other nationalities and people groups, the largest populations coming from Russians, Lezgins, Talish, and believe it or not, Armenians. However, that's more in reference towards the Armenians living in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, as it's pretty much impossible or incredibly rare to find any Armenian living anywhere else in Azerbaijan. But who are the Azerbaijanis? Some people will tell you that they are descended from the Persians, others might tell you the Caucasian Albanians, not to be confused with modern-day Albanians. That's a completely different thing. Well, the general consensus is that the
That makes this relatively complicated. Yeah, going into this, I didn't know there was conflict behind what an Azerbaijani is. I didn't understand that there was like any sort of confusion in defining that. So I didn't even know the question, let alone the answer. So
The Azerbaijani people today are Turks, or Turkic people. Not to be confused with Turkish people from Turkey, although they are very close cousins. Yeah, in the world of geographical sociology, a lot of things sound like other things, but they aren't exactly the same things as those things. This means that the Azerbaijani language is very close to the Turkish language, and people can travel interchangeably between both countries and relatively understand each other. It's like Spanish and Portuguese. Now, what's really interesting is that Azerbaijan is one of the few Shia majority countries in the world. They also have a very interesting culture dynamic in which the majority of people identify as culturally Muslim rather than consistently devout and observant Muslim. This type of social coherence really permeates throughout the population of the country, as it's very noticeably secular in the way how it operates. Women are allowed to wear whatever they want and are not required to wear hijabs or burqas, and religious freedom is allowed. All right, well, moving on. To put it simply, Azerbaijan has a long history of friends, but also some surprising new people that they just started to kind of click with. Today, Azerbaijan has diplomatic relations with over 160 countries, mostly centralized in Europe and Asia. Azerbaijan's immediate neighbors to the north and south, Georgia and Iran, have always had cordial relations with Azerbaijan and have open borders and trade agreements. When it comes to Russia, though, things are a little hit or miss. Yes, as a former Soviet state, Azerbaijan does have ties to Russia, and they have been working on their diplomacy and partnerships. However, most Azerbaijanis disapprove of the relations with Russia, mostly because they are more supportive of Armenia in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and even took part in fights like the Khojaly massacre. Pakistan.
So the Armenian thing is, it's a deep wound. It does not appear like it's done. It doesn't appear like it will be done anytime soon. I'm sure there are ways to like find some Azerbaijanis and Armenians online that talk a little bit more about this stuff, because I would love to hear the conversation from their perspective, and I'm sure I could find something like that. So that's something I might pursue in the future if I don't forget. But I forget a lot of things.
Pakistan is kind of like the fangirl of Azerbaijan. Pakistan cheers for Azerbaijan and recognizes their side of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and has even gone so far as to even unrecognize Armenia as a state. Strangely enough, though, Azerbaijan is actually
that's always strange.
Muslim majority countries that actually gets along pretty well with Israel. They provide Israel with fuel, and Israel
they're secular. That helps.
And technological assistance. The Jewish community has lived peacefully within Azerbaijan for over 1,500 years. Persecution was virtually unknown to the Jewish community in Azerbaijan, which also served as a safe haven for Jews fleeing from the Holocaust. And finally, we get to Turkey. Turkey, as you can probably guess, is without a doubt Azerbaijan's best friend. Despite the Sunni-Shia difference, they have the closest ties culturally, linguistically, and diplomatically. Turkey also supports Azerbaijan in nearly all of their disputes and conflicts, like a proud older brother. There's a saying...
Yeah, it seems like... I used to think the Sunni-Shia divide was a bit of a deal breaker. It seemed like it was a deal breaker in more countries than it actually is in reality, and often the political circumstances seem like they're able to supersede the religious conflict in a lot of ways. Not like perfectly always, but in some countries, in certain relationships, it's not as bad as I once thought it was. A lot of it is political conflict on top of the religious conflict, while the religious conflict is still there. I emphasize that. I'm not trying to downplay it. I just thought that it was one of those things that just couldn't be gotten past. But then, as I start to learn more about it, I find that there's more layers to it than I originally knew. I'm glad that we have the flags right on top of each other. I know my face is covering it, but it's nice seeing the 8-sided star and the 5-sided star thing, these virtually similar flag designs right next to each other, because it gives me a better idea of what makes them distinct.
Between them, the two of them are one nation, two countries. In conclusion, I can guarantee you there's pretty much no place like Azerbaijan. I mean, it's a Shia Muslim majority, yet kind of secular country that drinks wine and gets along with Israel and has mud volcanoes. What? Stay tuned.
There's some based elements of that.
The Bahamas is cool.
Ooh.
Just want to see it.
I'm excited for a lot of the B's. I love the Bahamas flag.
Quick thank you to
I don't know what it is about it. I'm a very big fan of the side triangle, so that's a big deal to me. So I'm very excited about the Bahamas. That should be really cool. There's a good amount of B countries that sound really interesting to me. So there's a lot to it. While their relationship with the Armenians and their history with the Armenians is troubling, which is putting it lightly, there's a lot of elements that I kind of like about Azerbaijan, in theory, at least. Coming from a secular nation myself, it's kind of nice to see a secular Muslim nation. It makes them a little bit more relatable from my perspective. It's a nice little bridge in between to have like a secular Muslim country to compare and contrast with the more devout religious Muslim countries. It could act as a good way of, I guess, comparing. I don't know. It's a good it's a good example that I might return to at some point in the future because of its unique makeup. So that's cool. That's cool. So we're going to be doing Bahamas next, and whichever one comes after the Bahamas, we'll probably pack that in there. We're going to probably try to do at least 2 of these per episode, just to speed it up a little bit, because there's way too many countries in the world. He's like deep into the S's right now, I think, maybe further by now. So yeah, gotta speed things up. If I ever want to finish this. And a lot of his later ones are really long. So by the time I get around to those, I might end up going back to just one country per episode. But while they're like 10 minutes or shorter, yeah, I could do a couple per episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's been a minute since I've done a Geography Now thing, so it's been nice. I'll be finishing up Hamilton real soon. I'll be back with more Geography Now soon. I've got some extra history stuff that I'd like to do. I have a lot of stuff that I've been wanting to do. I've just been a little more busy. As you could probably tell, my upload schedule has been slowed significantly, so I'll try to get back to something a little more consistent. If I don't, then trust that I have good reason. All right. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time with another video, possibly Geography Now, possibly Hamilton next, possibly something else. We'll see. I'll decide on the day I record. All right. Later.